Hello everyone, my name is Code Freak. Welcome to my channel. Please be sure to like and hit the subscribe button below. Today's video is part 3 of my tutorial about making original music without knowing how to play live instruments. In this video, I will be covering the more advanced aspects of Cakewalk's piano roll view for use with drawing in notes from melodic virtual instruments. If you prefer to use different software than Cakewalk, feel free to adapt my tutorial to the corresponding settings in your DAW. First, let's talk about the MIDI Properties section at the bottom of the piano roll view. Regarding this section, we are going to explore two common settings that can be tweaked. You'll see a box in the lower left with a highlighted tab containing the word velocity in it, which is the first common setting we will cover. This indicates how hard or soft the note is hit. Depending on the instrument you've loaded, the velocity setting for each note will affect not only the volume of the note, but the tonal characteristics of it. I've added a piano instrument to this project for demonstration purposes. Let's add some notes. As you can see, there's a vertical bar for each note in the main grid within the MIDI Properties box. If I select the top edge of a bar or note and move the mouse up and down, the velocity changes accordingly. The bar and MIDI note's color changes depending on the height of the bar. The higher the bar, the harder the note is hit and the brighter the color for the corresponding note. You can change the velocity of multiple notes at once in different ways. One way is to select all the notes you want to edit and raise or lower the bar for a selected note, like so. Another way is to left-click and hold on an empty spot in the MIDI Properties section and drag the cursor in the direction of the MIDI notes you want to edit. This is useful for changing the velocity of notes without having to click and edit each note separately, and allows you to edit in a free-form fashion. If you hold the Shift key down while you do this, the notes you will edit will change their velocity in a clean and proportional slope, like so. It is important to know that all the MIDI notes will be affected if no notes are selected. If you select any MIDI notes, only the notes selected will be affected. If you want to exclude certain notes from being edited, hold down the Control key while selecting a note you want to exclude to deselect it. That note will not be affected by the edits you make. The other common setting we will cover is the pitch wheel. In most cases where the pitch wheel is applicable, its use is self-explanatory. In this tutorial, rather than using a physical wheel to change the pitch live, we will draw the pitch directly into the Properties box. Let's add the pitch wheel setting to the Properties box in the MIDI track we're using. To do this, go to the bottom left corner of the piano roll view, click on the button with the plus sign on it, and within the box that pops up, labeled MIDI Event Type, change the type from Control to Wheel. Ignore the other settings for now. Now that you've added the pitch wheel to the Properties section of the piano roll view, make sure the tab labeled Wheel is selected. You will now see an empty grid with a faint horizontal line in the center here. The center line has a value of 0, meaning you can alter the pitch to be higher or lower, just like on a keyboard's pitch wheel. Depending on the grid snap settings, the resolution of the adjustments you make will be affected accordingly. Setting the snap settings to be a smaller fraction will make your adjustments finer. The wheel property works in a different way than the velocity property when it comes to editing. Rather than having a bar for each note, you can select anywhere in the bottom grid and draw where you want your pitch to be. The further away the line is from the center, the greater the difference between the initial pitch and the altered pitch. When you draw in the pitch, you'll notice there's an extended line at the end of where you set the pitch, here. This means the pitch of the notes on the MIDI track will remain altered until the next point where the value changes. To reset the value, select the last part of the line, for example here, and drag it to the center until you see the black dot here. The black dot means the value has been reset to 0. There are also other settings you can tweak, but for now I'm just covering the two most common ones. Feel free to explore the other settings at your leisure. Next, let's talk about the MIDI track list at the right of the piano roll view. If you watched part 2 of this series where I explained the basics of using Cakewalk's piano roll view for the purpose of drawing notes, you may remember I briefly mentioned a feature where you can use multiple MIDI tracks as reference points when adjusting the notes in the piano roll view. What this essentially means is you can view multiple MIDI tracks at once within the same instance of the piano roll view and switch between them, which is useful for aligning two different MIDI tracks properly. For example, let's duplicate the MIDI track we already have and rename the duplicate. To do this, right-click on a track you would like to duplicate, which in this case is the MIDI track, then select Duplicate Track, and make sure your box matches this one. A new MIDI track appears below the one you were trying to duplicate. Now, if you look at the piano roll view, there are two MIDI tracks with their corresponding track numbers on the right. If I click on the number for track 2, the first MIDI track, and draw a note, then, while holding down the Control key, I click on the number for track 3, I can see the MIDI note from track 2, now translucent. By doing this, I can use the notes from track 2 as a reference point when drawing on the active track, in this case track number 3. Whatever track has solid notes is the active track you are drawing in. This is important when working with MIDI tracks for multiple instruments at the same time. Thank you for watching part 3. Check out my social media links in the description below, and be sure to take a look at part 4 of this tutorial series, where we cover how to draw automation in Cakewalk. See you guys next time.